Hey everybody, welcome to Shooting the with Yankee. As always, I'm Yankee, so let's start shooting. Today's topic is one that is going to be difficult, I think, because a lot of people are going to have different opinions about this, and it stems from a question that I got from a viewer. Last night we were talking about gun control laws and children being able to access guns or handle guns at ranges, etc. And someone sent me an email asking me, should children, if they're at home alone, like you work and they're home alone a few hours a day or a few hours at night, should they have access to a firearm in case of an emergency? Should they have that? And I wanted to address that question today, and I wanted to find out what you all think. Now, my answer is going to be absolutely not. Now, when we say children, I'm assuming we're meaning kids, like the age 8 to 15. And no, I would not trust them with access to a firearm because their brains don't work right yet. You can train them as much as you want, especially younger children, preteen. Their brains don't work right yet. Deep reasoning is not something they're even capable of. No matter how much you train them, you can't expect them to react like a reasonable, responsible person because their brains aren't capable of that yet. So it is a bad idea to allow children that age to have access to firearms. Some people will use a terrifying scenario, but what if they're home alone and someone's breaking in and they're going to kidnap them or hurt them or something? Well, here's the thing. Don't leave kids that age home alone. There's no excuse for it. If you've got kids that age, when they're going to be home alone, have them go to a friend's house. Have them go to a family member's house. Have someone else come stay with them. Surely you know someone. If you don't know anyone, well, then find a local program, an after-school program, some sort of program that allows them to come to a public place and be supervised. Because kids that age shouldn't be left alone, period, for any long period of time, especially if it's at night, when most bad things are going to happen. Now, the chances of it happening are very small, so I'm not that worried about it, but I am more worried about the chance of kids doing something wrong with a firearm if they have access to it. That's actually more likely. So no, you shouldn't give young children access to firearms, period. That's bad decision. That's bad parenting. And if you find yourself in a situation where you have to do that, well, then you might be failing as a parent. So that's my opinion on it. Now, when you get into teenagers, well, that's dependent on the teenager. At that point, they start to become more capable of rational thought, knowing consequences, doing the right thing, but still, their rational brain is quite easily overridden by other impulses and influences. So even then, it's not a given and would have to be kid per kid basis. In my house, when my kids were teenagers, there were shotguns on the walls. They knew they weren't allowed to touch them unless there was an extreme emergency. They never bothered them. But, and I know because I have video cameras in my house. And that's another thing you should do. If your kids are home alone, have other things that are there. Make sure your home is well secured. Make sure your windows are locked. Maybe even guard rails on the windows so people can't get in from outside. These are things you got to take precautions and do if you're going to have valuable children at home. Make sure you got security alarm. Make sure you got a camera. All those things to make your child safer. First off, don't leave children alone. Two, if you do have kids at home, even teenagers, have ways to make that home safe. And if they're older and they're responsible, then I guess they could have access to a firearm. But small children, not a chance. If you're doing that, I don't think you're being a very good parent. So with my really judgmental opinion there out of the way, let's go over and see what other people think. Do they agree? Do they disagree? Should children have access to firearms in case of emergency? Mike White said, when I was growing up, see below. I can't even get it to work. My live chat's not even moving, so I don't know what's going on over there. Now it's moving. And I don't see your chat. It won't go up that far that I can even see it. So I can't see below. Now, if you're saying what I think you might be saying, I had access to when I was a kid too. And here's the thing. We were told never touch them. Guess what we did all the time? We touched them. We got my grandfather's rifle down off the mantle. We played with it. We even had an MD one time with it, and managed to cover it up. I remember for the longest time there was a hole in my grandmother's floor under the roll-up rug, and I was always so terrified they were going to find it. But I don't know if they ever did. I think she died before they ever found it. But when he sold the house, he probably like, what's this hole about this big in the floor? Unfortunately, there were holes in other places too, like knots in the wood flooring that had come out. So I don't think it was that noticeable. But yeah, we had an MD with it in my grandmother's house. Edgar Cortez said no. He didn't even mince any words about it. He just said no. Ghost Shadow says, Yankee, if someone says Kel-Tec is the pinnacle of firearms, is very obviously wrong. Oh, well, yeah, well, that's true, but that doesn't got nothing to do with what we're talking about. But that's a true statement. Kel-Tec are garbage, period. Crazy Pitbull 16 has weighed in. That was Ghost Shadow, by the way, said that. Crazy Pitbull 16 weighed in and says, why didn't you get the 3-inch engraved python from Altamont from the beginning instead of the 4-inch one you got? Well, because I wanted the 4-inch one. I wanted it. Now that I have it, the 3-inch one's the one I wanted. Remember, I did go back and forth. It was a very difficult and painful process deciding. And that's got nothing to do with the topic either. But let's get to the topic here. Practical Bacon said, I would say it highly depends on the age maturity of the child. So it's a very gray area. But the responsibility repercussions are 100% on the parent. Yes, they are 100% on the parent. One of the things I hate seeing quite often is you'll see someone whose child got a hold of their gun and kills either themselves or a sibling. And then they're like, well, the parent isn't going to face any charges because they already lost a child and that's enough punishment. Like, no, it isn't. Put their ass in fucking jail. They murdered their child. Next best thing to it. So put them in jail. Mikey D said, hard to say. If they have access in an emergency, they technically have access anytime. And if they do something not an emergency, it's your butt. Exactly. Now, it would be if you have a safe that can tell you if it's been opened. Like I have had safes that if you pushed in the button code and opened it, I could access how many times that had been opened and when it had last been opened via an app. So that was nice. I could always know if they got into it or not. But still, you know, that's an extra precaution you would take, I guess, if you were deciding you were going to leave a teenager with access to a gun. But yeah, they have access to it in an emergency. They have access to it always. Mr. Furley, yes, safety plans require all hands on deck. Well, not little hands. Little hands, I don't think should play a part in it, but I guess we disagree on that. Or baby. I didn't really understand everything he's saying there. Paul B. Hail Phil. Too much can go wrong. Not worth it. That's right. Your kid's really more at risk having access to that gun, statistically. More at risk having access to an unloaded firearm. Like if you had an 8-year-old home who's always home for 3 hours when they get out of school before you get home. That child is much more statistically at risk having access to a loaded firearm without supervision than they are from anything negative happening to them from the outside world. So not only does that tell me you're a bad parent if you do that, it tells me you're also bad at math. Edgar Cortez, who I do believe is the last person to weigh in here, says cerebral binocularity doesn't start until after 40 years. Well, around 25, most people are as smart as they're ever going to be. And it, 15, 16, sometimes younger, depending on male or female, they start to develop serious reasoning skills. But, all it takes for, like if you're 30 and you know something's absolutely wrong and you say, not doing that, that's stupid and dangerous. And your other friend who's also 30 goes, oh, come on, do it. And you're like, fuck you, you go do it. I'm not. If you're 17 and you're like, I'm not doing that, it's dangerous. And your best friend who's also 17, or worse yet, a female who's 17 says, oh, come on. You're like, all right. It's far easier to override the good reasoning of a teenager than it is an adult. Adults usually don't give in to peer pressure quite as much, whereas kids do. But also, like I said, it's not just peer pressure, but that's one aspect. If your kid's at home alone, has access to a firearm, let's say they're 15 years old, two of their friends come over and their friends are like, hey, can we see your gun or your dad's rifle or whatever? And he says, no, I'm not allowed to touch it. And they're like, you'll never fucking know. Come on, don't be a dick. Be cool. And it's not that hard to override the judgment of a 15-year-old. We did get one more person weighing in here. It's Peter D. Peter DeBoner. I just got the stop box to prevent my little ones from getting it. It's actually really awesome. Keep your guns locked up, dummies. I've been a big proponent of keeping your guns locked up if you're not on your person for years. Always said that. Especially if you have children, lock your guns up. Now, if you're like my house, everyone in my house is older. I'm 50-something. I'm married to a 55-year-old. We have a 26-year-old son and a 21-year-old son. So, you know, there's no children here. It's all adults. My son has access to his own firearms. My other son doesn't want access to firearms. He has it, but he didn't want them. So, you know, sometimes the acorn does fall far from the tree. But yeah, it really is a good idea to keep them locked up. It's better safe than sorry. Crazy Pitbull 16 weighed in once more and said, oh, well, this is a question for later. So I'll save that question for later. But that's it for today. Thanks everybody who participated. What do you think out there in the viewership? Do you think children should have access to firearms in case of an emergency? Let me know in the comment section of this video. If you want to weigh in on one of these topics live, be involved in the conversation, or just come in and then stick around for the open chat later, come to one of our live chats. We do them every night, 6 p.m., except for Wednesdays when they're at 7 p.m. Hope to see you at one soon. Until then, remember, always carry and stay safe until I see you again.